Joining me now is Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Governor DeSantis, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for being here. So you have now held events in all 99 of Iowa's counties. And yet, former President Trump is still 27 points ahead of you in the state. So, Governor, I have to ask you, are you committed to staying in this race through the Iowa caucuses?
Well, I'll tell you what, doing all 99 counties is a tradition here. It's something that Governor Reynolds advised that I do. And it's a way to, one, show that you're earning people's support. Two, it's a way to hear from real people outside of kind of the media bubble about what's important to them. And then I think, three, it reminds you that at the end of the day, you're a servant. You're not a ruler. And we really believe in servant leadership. So we went everywhere. We showed up. We took questions. And we've been able to build a really incredible organization. We've got over 30,000 people that already committed to caucus for us. We're adding more every day. Of course, we have the endorsement by the great governor here, Kim Reynolds, and, of course, by Bob Vander Plaats, most recently from the Family Leader. So I don't think anyone's ever done an Iowa caucus with this amount of institutional and grassroots support, and it's only going to build for here. And we look forward to being victorious on January 15th.
So just to be clear, you are committed to staying in the race through the caucuses?
Of course I am. I mean, it's absurd that I wouldn't be. If you look at past Iowa caucus winners and compare to what, people were saying in November with this poll or that poll, it almost never comes out the same way. So we have a great base of support. We have a much wider base of people who are potential caucus goers who believe that I've been a great governor and would be a good president. And we've just got to bring that home when people start to make their decisions, and they will be doing it. But I'll tell you one thing. What people in Iowa and even the other early states, they do not want the media choosing the Republican nominee. They do not want narrative to trump over their decisions. And so I see a lot of resistance on the ground here to some of the things that have tried to be spun, whether it's through polls, whether it's through pundits. And I think that's a good thing. I think you're going to see on caucus night people's voice be heard.
Well, let's talk about the stakes on caucus night. If you don't come in at least second, would you then drop out of the race? How critical is Iowa?
Well, we're going to win the caucus. We're doing everything that we need to do it.
But what if you don't, Governor?
Support.
What if you don't?
And I've said from the beginning, we're going to win. We're going to win the caucus. But even apart from that, there have been people that have won Iowa and not won the nomination, and vice versa. You need to win a majority of the delegates, and so we're committed to doing that through the whole process to win the majority of the delegates. There's a lot of things that happen. I mean, even 2 months ago, the field looked a lot different than it does now. I think the field will look different on caucus night than it does now. So it's a very dynamic situation. Fortunately, we're somebody that has broad support. We're well positioned, and we're going to be able to take it all the way to the end to be able to win a majority of those delegates.
Bottom line, is Iowa do or die for you, Governor?
We're going to win Iowa. I think it's going to help propel us to the nomination, but I think we'll have a lot of work that we'll have to do beyond that. I don't think you take anything for granted, and I do recognize that there have been people that have wanted who've not gone on to win the nomination. I think this year's a little bit different. I think the field is narrowed quicker. I think it's going to narrow even more, and ultimately Republican voters are going to have the choice of Donald Trump, which I think would make the election a referendum on him and a lot of the issues that he's dealing with, or me, and that will be a referendum on Biden's failures, on all the issues in the country that are affecting people, and I'll be able to stand for a positive vision going forward. We have a much better chance if we're doing it with me as the candidate. I'd also be able to serve 2 terms, and I'm more likely to actually get a lot of this stuff done. But those are the choices, realistically, for Republican voters.
You bring up former President Trump, so let me ask you about the GOP frontrunner. Mr. Trump is campaigning on the idea of retribution. He's promising to jail his political enemies if he's reelected. He's also referred to some of his political opponents as vermin, language that people, frankly, across the political spectrum say harkens back to Nazi Germany. Do you think that kind of language is presidential?
Well, I think even beyond that, the issue is why are you running? Are you running for your personal issues, or are you running for the American people's issues? and I'm running for the American people's issues. And now part of that is this government is out of control. We have seen weaponization of agencies like the DOJ and the FBI and the IRS. I'm going to end that weaponization. But that's not because I'm doing it for me. It's because I'm doing it for the people that have been under the thumb of these agencies, and I'm going to restore the rule of law. So I think if Donald Trump is saying his whole thing is retribution for himself, well, what about all the other people that have had issues with that? Is that somebody, are those people he's going to be standing up with? So I don't think you can say it's about your enemies. I think you got to say it's about the American people's future. And the goal is to end weaponization, period, and to have a single standard of justice employed, not to basically do what we don't like is being done now, just in a different direction.
Governor, as you know, DOJ officials would reject the idea that it has been weaponized. But let me ask you about my original question, the use of the word vermin.
Kristen,
are you comfortable with that term? But are you comfortable with that term, Governor?
Let me just say on the DOJ, well, first of all, I'm responsible for what I say, and I say things differently. But on the DOJ
are you comfortable
and the
with
FBI,
that term? Let's just,
I mean, we have
just
seen.
On my question, though, Governor.
Excuse me. What I'm not comfortable with is FBI agents going after parents going to school board meetings. I'm not comfortable with DOJ, FBI working with tech companies to censor dissent. I'm not comfortable with how power has been exercised, and you have an agency that is very political. People say, oh, their career, but it's 99% donations to Democrats. You are seeing how that happens.
Governor,
so I don't use the same rhetoric that he does. I conduct myself in a different way. I think I conduct myself in a way that's more effective as a leader. Part of what you have to do is you have to be strong. You have to deliver big results. But what you don't want to do is you don't want to alienate people for no reason. And I think some of the reasons why he struggled electorally is because it's not even about the policy, it's about some of these other things.
So do you condemn the use of the word vermin? Do you condemn the use of the word vermin then?
I don't use the term, but what I don't do is play the media's game where I'm asked to referee other people. He's responsible for his words. He's responsible for his conduct. I'm responsible for mine. But I will tell you, more important than the choice of words is, why are you running? If he's running for personal retribution, that is not going to lead to what we need as a country. You got to be running for the American people and their issues, not about your own personal issues. And that is a distinction between us. I am focused on the folks. I am focused on what they want to see done for this country in a positive direction. I'm the vessel, but ultimately it's not about me.
Let me ask you about a development on Capitol Hill. Speaker Mike Johnson says he believes he has the votes to open an impeachment inquiry into President Biden and that he has a duty to hold such a vote. But let me ask you, do you think Republicans run the risk of having that move potentially backfire and emboldening President Biden as he heads into a re-election year if they move to impeach him?
So here's what I think. I think that the Biden family, the amount of money that's flowed into that family, to me, is corrupt. I think that it's not been explained in ways that make any sense. And so opening an inquiry based on the facts that we have, I think would be justifiable. However, I think they run the risk of doing an inquiry that doesn't necessarily lead anywhere, while they've been ignoring a lot of the problems that our voters are talking about. When I'm going through Iowa, Republican voters obviously are not fond of Joe Biden. Yes, they're concerned about Hunter and all this money, but they're more concerned about what's happening at our border. They're more concerned about what's happening with the economy. They're more concerned about federal agencies that are overstepping their bounds. And so if you're doing the inquiry, which, again, I think is justifiable, you also have to be addressing all these other issues. And I think that there's a feeling out here that they're not focused on the key issues that they wanted to see addressed. Clearly on the budget, there's been no progress on that. So make sure you're not ignoring all these other issues and don't use that inquiry as kind of a Trojan horse to not then meet your responsibilities on all these other things.
And, of course, there is a special counsel investigation into Hunter Biden. Let me turn to another domestic policy issue, one of the big issues that came up during your debate with Governor Gavin Newsom, abortion. Governor Newsom asked if you would sign a 6-week national ban if you were president. You still have not answered that question, so let me ask you again here now. If you were elected president, Would you sign a 6-week national ban if it came to your desk?
I've actually answered the question a bunch of times. So Florida has protections when there's a heartbeat. Other states have done it differently. This is something that's going to be done in a bottom-up way. I recognize that. I'm here in Iowa, where they have a heartbeat bill. I'll be going to New Hampshire at the beginning of next week. They obviously are not going to do that. They're going to approach it differently. We understand that. But I do think every state has a responsibility to have some limit into how they're doing it. In California, they fund abortion with tax dollars and can go all the way up to the moment of birth. I don't agree with that. I think it's wrong. But in terms of how this issue is going to be adjudicated, it's clearly going to be done on a bottom-up level.
Governor,
what's good for Florida or what's good for Texas is not necessarily what's going to fly in New Hampshire or Pennsylvania.
But Governor,
that's just the reality. Dobbs returned the issue to the political process.
I understand, but you signed a 6-week ban in the state of Florida, so voters want to know. People of Iowa want to know. Where do you stand on this issue? Would you sign a 6-week federal ban if it came to your desk, if you were president?
But we signed a legislation to stand for a culture of life that was done by the Florida legislature. I mean, this was them bringing the will of the people there. Well, Congress is not going to do any type of abortion legislation. They haven't done abortion legislation. The only thing that's impacted abortion on the federal level, I think, last thing is Obamacare in 2010. So we understand that. And part of me promoting a culture of life is to do things that are achievable and that obviously would have consensus. No taxpayer funding for abortion. We're going to eliminate the abortion tourism policy of the Department of Defense, and we're going to protect the rights of states to enact pro-life protection.
Let me ask you about Obamacare. Former President Trump said he wants to repeal and replace Obamacare, something he tried and failed to do when he was president. You were in Congress at the time. If you were president, would it be your plan to try to repeal and replace Obamacare, something you voted to eliminate 3 times?
Well, you're right. President Trump promised that he would repeal and replace Obamacare, and he didn't do it. And that was a promise that he made a lot of times.
What would you do, Governor? What would you
costs
do?
have continued to go up. Well, but I think it's important to point out he's running on a lot of the things he campaigned on in 2016 and didn't deliver it on, whether it's repeal and replace Obamacare, whether it's building the border wall, whether it's draining the swamp. Remember, he said he would do a special counsel against Hillary Clinton. Then 2 weeks after the election said no. Now he says he's going to do one against Biden.
Understood,
so
but
this
Governor,
is part
what
of
would
a pattern
you do?
where he's running on things that he didn't do. Here's what I will do. What I think you're going to need to do is have a plan that will supersede Obamacare, that will lower prices for people so that they can afford health care, while also making sure that people with pre-existing conditions are protected. And we're going to look at the big institutions that are causing prices to be high. Big pharma, big insurance, and big government. But it's going to need to be where you have a reform package that's going to be put in place. I don't think that repeating what Trump did and the failure is necessarily going to make sense. So we will address that. We will make sure that the Obamacare promised lower premiums. It didn't deliver that. We know we need to go in a different direction, but it's going to be done by having a plan that's going to be able to supersede it. And
Governor,
we will be working on that.
I want to be clear by what you mean by supersede. Do you mean you will move to repeal Obamacare and try to replace it with something else, or will you leave it in place and make revisions?
No. You will have a totally different health care plan.
So you repeal it?
But what
You'll
it will
move
be
to
is
repeal it?
people that will be on things like if they have an exchange plan, we'll have a plan that will offer them coverage. So the coverage will be different and better, but they're still going to be able to be covered. So we want to make sure we have as many people covered as possible at the lowest possible price. And like in places like Florida, I mean, we already have. I signed pre-existing protections anyways. And so I know that was like a big deal with Obamacare, but that's an easy thing that we'll agree on. So that's not a big deal. So it's going to be, we're going to have a plan. I think it's going to supersede Obamacare. It's going to be much better for people.
I just want to be very clear, though. Are you going to keep Obamacare in place and make revisions to it? Is that your plan? Just to be crystal clear.
This will be replacing Obamacare.
So you'll repeal it and replace it. We need to have a health care
plan that works. Obamacare hasn't worked. We are going to replace and supersede with a better plan.
Can you tell me specifically what the plan is and what your plan is to ensure the 40 million people who now have health insurance who didn't before Obamacare was passed?
Well, we're going to be working on, probably in the spring, we'll roll out a big proposal. I've got a lot of input that's been coming in from a lot of good people around the country, but we will definitely be addressing insurance. We'll definitely be addressing big government, and we will be addressing big pharma. You know, we pay more for drugs in this country than anybody else in the world. I'd like to see some equity across these developed countries so that our consumers are getting relief. Obamacare promised that. It didn't deliver. So we're going to do something that actually works.
Governor, very quickly, though, as you know, Iowans are weighing in just over a month now. They want to know what your plan is on a range of issues on this critical issue of health care. Can you say specifically what your plan looks like? What would your plan be to ensure Americans?
More transparency, more consumer choice, more affordable options, less red tape, less bureaucracy weighing everybody down. And for example, we need price transparency. If you want to lower prices, you need to have markets actually work. Well, if nobody knows how much anything costs, well, of course it's not going to lower prices. There's third-party payers. So we're going to have transparency, and then we're going to have folks have health plans available so that if they do choose a procedure that's cheaper than the one down the street, that they actually share in the savings with lower premiums. You got to give the consumer a benefit if they're doing that type of price comparison. And so we've done that on a small level in Florida with our state health plan, saved millions of dollars for folks, and they've gotten lower premiums as a result. That's a model that I think can work nationally.
Governor DeSantis, final question. You are a big supporter of deregulation and small government. You were just talking about it in your speech when it comes to things like corporate subsidies, environmental regulations. But when it comes to things like education, and you support banning critical race theory and as well instruction about sexual orientation and gender identity. How is that not just another form of government regulation?
Well, first of all, the states clearly have priority when it comes to education. It's one of our core functions. I would not support the federal government setting a national curriculum. That's the state's job. So we have to set standards about what we're going to do and what we're not going to do. And so we've determined as a state that we want education, but not agendas or indoctrination. Things like critical race theory are inappropriate. It's divisive, and it's not something that is proven to be effective. Now, on the whole issue of the sexualization of the curriculum, particularly for the elementary schools, because this was the fight that we had when Disney opposed that legislation. Parents of young kids do not want these issues adjudicated in elementary school. We need to focus on reading, we need to focus on math and science and the basics, and not have a second grader told that they can change their gender. It's
Governor,
just wrong.
But Governor,
and so, yes, we want people to know.
I want to ask you about this disparity, though. So state regulation, you support government regulation at the state level, but not at the federal level? It's okay to have government regulation at the state level?
But you're conflating regulating the regulation. So, for example, to have the EPA say you have a puddle on your farm here in Iowa, and so we should come in and regulate you, well, that's obviously overreach. But when you're talking about a K through 12 school system, which we fund with tax dollars, we have a state board of education that sets state standards and that absolutely has an appropriate role in ensuring that we have adequate curriculum. Those are two different things. That's a government product that is being provided for people for education. Of course, we can determine what the terms are for that, but that's much different than having government go outside of that and going after a farmer, going after these other things. So what we're doing is totally appropriate. And you know what, Kristen? The proof's in the pudding. I mean, U.S. News and World Report ranks us #1 for education. The most recent NAEP results for 2022, first post-COVID results, we were 3rd and 4th, respectively, in 4th grade reading and 4th grade math. I was born and raised in Florida. That was not true when I was a kid. So we're doing it right, and we're producing high-quality education.
All right. Governor Ron DeSantis, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.